Terrifier 3 was a lot. In this case, a lot means absolutely horrific. Let's discuss, if I must. As you can see here, I got a new mic and fluffy pink windbreaker thing for the mic. So we're doing a little mini episode test run thing here. Typically these sorts of things will be on my Patreon, but I wasn't trying to get too crazy, too fancy this time around. And also I just needed to discuss this absolutely horrific movie with anyone. I seriously made a list of synonyms for horrific and gruesome because I just could not think of anything else to describe this. And keep in mind, I'm a horror fan. Like, I love horror movies. Granted, I am more of like a Conjuring, Paranormal Activity, Sinister, Scream type of gal. I'm definitely a Ghostface type of gal. I actually have Scream on in the background as a sort of palate cleanse in the background. Yesterday I tried watching a horror movie and could not get through it. I was repulsed, had to turn it off at just the slightest hint of violence after what I had witnessed the night before in the theaters. I don't know if it was just seeing it on the big screen that made it absolutely insufferable, but it was. And keep in mind, I went into this expecting it to be awful because, one, I've seen the first two movies, and two, the entire reason we bought the tickets in the first place was because all over TikTok is people leaving the theater, throwing up, passing out, just in the opening scene. And let me tell you, when you're watching that opening scene, it becomes evident, very clear, why people were behaving in that way after watching it. I do find myself getting more squeamish with this stuff as I get older. Like, when I was a preteen or teenager or whatever, me and my friends would binge the Saw series like nobody's business. We had this whole inside joke thing where we loved, what was his name? Kramer? Billy Kramer? No, Billy's the doll. Something. Whatever his name is, we had a crush on him as like a meme. It was weird. Will not be discussing further, but I loved that sort of thing, and I even wanted to be a surgeon for a brief stint so I could clearly handle like blood, guts, etc., but it's really not my cup of tea anymore. This first part's gonna be spoiler free for This first part is gonna be spoiler free for the new movie, but not the first two, and then I'll give a warning before spoiling this lovely movie that you don't want to be spoiled for some reason. Two scenes that really stuck out to me from the first two movies were when that woman is strung up and a chainsaw, you know? Yeah, that one doesn't sit well. And then the second one, when that girl was just really having a hard time with Art the Clown and he gets the salt from the kitchen. Yeah, that one was rough, for sure. But keep in mind, like, I watched these movies, like, throughout this year, but, like, a while ago. And they were bad, but they weren't, like, awful. You know, I'm in my living room. I wasn't like, I'm gonna be sick. And I truly didn't think a movie could have that effect on me. I do know that if animals are being mistreated in a movie, I am not watching in any way. Like, I will leave for that part or just close my eyes and pretend I'm not there for that entire duration of the scene, which did occur in Terrifier 3 for a brief stint, and that made me really upset. But even some things like horror movie violence wise that I didn't think would get to me had me like looking away, gagging. Anyways, like I said, we've been seeing that this opening scene is so bad that people have been leaving the theater. Within the first 5 minutes is where I, too, realized that this was the most disturbing thing I have ever laid my eyes on, and hopefully the most disturbing thing I ever will see, because I really don't know how it could top that. Ugh. There were many times where you would look around the theater and almost everyone is like agape, like, or covering their mouth or covering their eyes or just in some sort of shock. We did make it through the whole thing, me and Andrew, but there was this moment of just like, we have to make it through 2 more hours of this, or like another hour and a half of this, or like, shit, like, why? And keep in mind, like, God, we're keeping a lot of things in mind, but this was supposed to be like our romantic date night. We went out to dinner, whatever, and this is what we're watching. Okay, into the recap. This is still spoiler free. Keep those trigger warnings in mind. I was expecting it to be bad, like gory bad, just based on what I had seen on TikTok and other people's reactions and stuff. But I severely underestimated just how bad, and also my ability to watch it and process it. It also is definitely pushing the boundaries of what we've seen in horror before, definitely on the big screen as well. Like, normally you see this type of violence in small indie films that never really breach a lot of people, or like as many people as something like this. It was different for sure, and also begs the question, like, one, why do we like this stuff, and where is the limit? Like, is there a point where we won't watch fake violence in films, or is everything on the table if we know that it's fake?
The limit does not exist.
I also definitely felt like watching that film was affecting my psyche after, so it like begs another question of like just how real life are the effects of this film, even if it is pretend, like, you know? But that's for another video. About 5 minutes in, it was pretty clear what all the TikTok fuss was about, but also I would argue that that opening scene was very necessary to set the tone for the rest of the movie and the expectations for what we were about to see, because it's pretty blunt in the opening scene, no pun intended, that there's going to be some questionable violence going on here that's not for the weak-stomached, weak-minded viewers. And essentially it was weeding out the weak. To be honest, I didn't find the plot of the first two movies particularly engaging, so it took me a second to like snap back into what was going on, just to remember that the plot of this movie also wasn't really too engaging in terms of like the why, I guess. We pop back into this film 5 years after the second movie ends, revisiting those characters and seeing sort of where they're at now, including Art the Clown. I guess it was fine that it took me a while to realize what was going on or remember what went on in the first films, because Art the Clown and our main characters don't actually reunite until like the last scene, so like an hour and a half into the movie. But it's fine. It's fine. He made up for it. But in that time that you're watching a lot of senseless violence of other characters that get picked off one by one, you have plenty of time to recall the vague, demonic, mythological, paranormal origins of Art the Clown. This lore also involves Jerry Russo, so shout out. I guess it also involves wizards. It almost felt like they were trying really hard to give Art like a reason and try to justify all this violence that was occurring. Like, not justify it, but explain it. And I feel like in films like this with such intense violence, it's like trying to qualify that in any sense is a bit ridiculous. Like, the viewers have accepted that the violence is senseless, and that's almost what they're there for. So it just felt a little hollow and undercooked in terms of the reasonings behind Art's being. It was a run-on sentence if I've ever heard one. The film has a feeble attempt at driving home the paranormal aspect of Art the Clown, and in my opinion, also kind of misses the mark in framing our main character as like the hero or the chosen one. It's clear what they're going for, but I feel like the chosen one aspect of the main character doesn't really align with the backstory that they're building for Art, so they kind of just miss each other, and it feels a little, like I said, undercooked, underdeveloped. The kills were definitely not underdeveloped, so they spent a lot of time on that and not too much time tying it all together, but like I said, how important is that in a film of this nature? At a certain point though, like on the other side of that, I feel like it's almost needed to introduce some sort of reason, even if it is not an adequate one or fully developed, because any sane-minded person would start to think like, okay, are we watching a movie or are we just watching a bunch of unalivings? We get dropped off with somewhat likable characters, decent concept of a story somewhere along the way. Everyone loves paranormal and mythological origins, so shout out to them for throwing that in there somehow. And a shit ton of violence, which is typically what people are intrigued by with these movies. And there was definitely an expectation to top the first two that unfortunately was granted in the opening scene. So we all just kind of strapped in after that. We're going to head into the spoiler review of this movie. So if you haven't seen it and you plan on seeing it, which I would advise against, don't watch this until you have. I don't know if me and Andrew are just fucking stupid, but the opening scene was like a red herring. Like, we spent the whole first hour trying to figure out like who that little girl was, what their relevance was to everything. And by the time we realized it wasn't important, I felt like we had missed so much of the other plot like building, but that's fine. When that camera panned up and we saw where those noises were coming from, man, I had this moment of like, and that's when people got up and left. Yeah, that adds up. That tracks. I also do genuinely appreciate that our main character, Sienna, was in a psychiatric facility, because so rarely do we see horror movies acknowledge the psychological aspect of the main characters. I mean, more so now, but a lot of the time they just like bounce back and it doesn't feel entirely authentic. Unfortunately, her descent was a real one. She was not just mentally suffering. There were actually Art and his accomplices back again, so that really sucked. But I do not really enjoy the trope of like, oh, the main character's crazy and dangerous and we don't believe her, like she's unwell, especially when they try to frame her as a suspect. Like, I don't know if it's just overdone, but it really annoys me. I in general don't like knowing things that the characters in the show or movie don't know, unless it's done right, because I just get mad. Like, an idiot, open your eyes. Like, I don't know, I just don't like when they paint our main character as a suspect when we know what's going on. But I did enjoy that they acknowledged the mental ramifications of what happened in the previous films. There were some really brutal unalivings in this movie, and I genuinely do not know how to say more without getting like flagged on so many levels. So we're just gonna vaguely go over some of the worst, or depending on who you ask, best moments from this film. And then I'm literally never gonna talk about this movie again or watch it or think about it. Starting off strong with chainsaw. This is what I wrote: chainsaw, shower, scrotum. Ouch. If you've seen the movie, you know, but if you haven't, you don't want to. There's a couple, they're being intimate. There is Art the Clown, he has a chainsaw. The next one is the bar scene. I think this actually came before the last scene, but when they're all in the bar and Art's just clowning around, like, you have to laugh. Like, why is he reacting like that? Like, he's a kooky man. He's kooky. And the ID, oh god, it was just silly. That scene was, I think, their feeble attempt at comedic relief. And I say feeble attempt at everything, but like, they didn't have a feeble attempt at making the most horrific movie I've ever seen. So kudos to them for doing something, right? Did not appreciate the scene where, I mean, I should have expected it, but where Art's person, what's her name, like Veronica maybe, was breaking the mirror with her skull and then used it to sleep in the bathtub. Did not enjoy that. And I also did not enjoy the rat scene with the liquid nitrogen. That was not the most pleasant thing I've ever seen. And actually, I didn't see much of it because I was like this. Way too many faces were peeled off in the making of this film. Way too fucking many. Why? Why was that a recurring theme? I feel like 2, maybe 3 is plenty, but we're pushing like 5 or 6 at this point. Another 0 out of 10 moment was Sienna's face getting pushed into the wall where her uncle was, and then with the pink string. Yeah, no, I did not like that at all. Never thought about that ever, because who the fuck would? Who came up with that? That may have been the most disturbing part of the entire movie, if you ask me. The pipe and the rats. That's all I'm going to say on that one. And also a portal into hell opened. Apparently that felt a little cheap. I really thought that little girl was going to be fine. And then the fucking portal opened beneath her somehow and got her ass. And the sword, oh my gosh, her hands. Seeing the inside of her hands could have gone without. But because her magic sword did it, they healed. So it's fine. But the magic sword is no more.
Nice rhyme.
It's in hell. And then she's like, I'll find you. How are you going to even begin to do that? Please let me know. Please let me know. It felt a little cheap as well that we didn't see the brothers unaliving. Not that I wanted to see more violence, But for a main character, you'd think they would show that. It makes me wonder, like, of course, if he's still alive, that makes sense. But it makes me wonder what the intention was there. Maybe we'll find out and they were setting it up for another movie, but it definitely felt like a cop-out. Unless the actor was just like, fuck no. Like, y'all have outdone yourselves. Y'all have did it. I want no parts of this, because me too. One of the craziest things that happened in this entire film, if you can call it a film, in this movie, was the mall scene. These kids sitting on Art's lap, him giving the presents, and that blast, oh my god. I don't know if I'm just stupid and like my brain doesn't even go to these dark places, but I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna open a limb or something like that. My mouth was agape. Last thing about the, like, violence part, in the last scene, Art's random head smacks of Sienna, another attempt at comedic relief that almost worked, because, like, why? Like, why does he hate her so much? Like, I know why, but, like, are you 12? Are you my 12-year-old brother? I don't have a 12-year-old brother, but are you? I do feel a little cheated that we only got, like, one scene with all our main characters, and really, we didn't get a scene with Sienna, Art, and her brother. Like, I don't know, it was kind of choppy, if you will. About 30-ish minutes from the end, I remember thinking, like, if there's one more bad gore scene, like, I'm gonna be sick. Like, I can't take anymore. And then sure enough, there was, and I made it through, blah, 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 whatever. Mama ain't raised no bitch. But I was close. I truly hope that this will help me process and never think about it again. If another one comes out, I will watch it. I will mentally prepare much more, but I figured there's no way in hell I'm going through all of that footage when this movie comes out to make a more in-depth video about it, so we might as well just get this shit over with and process it and move on, because fuck. Until another Terrifier comes out, I will not be thinking about it, talking about it. Goodbye. That's it. Y'all have at it. Good luck with that. Let me know what you thought, if you think there will be a Terrifier 4, if you think there should be, and if you will ever rewatch this movie, because I know I certainly will not. Yeah, it feels so official, like I'm always going to be recording now, babe. Literally, don't talk to me. Oh my god, Aspen Ovar just posted. I wonder if it's tea.